All you Owens Valley people and anybody else that might be watching this from other places. I hope that this day has brought a lot of and joy and patience to you and yours. These are things, peace, joy, and patience, that seem to be in kind of short supply some days, especially as the COVID world keeps going on and on. It's sometimes hard to find peace, joy, and patience. But these are things that we need to be strong for in this season. I apologize that I have not been able to keep these Facebook Live devotionals going as frequently as I had been. But there have been some shifts in our lives of late that have kind of put me a little bit off center, and I'm trying to get recentered because there's been a new thing that I'm having to learn during this past few weeks that I wasn't sure I was going to have to learn, but now I am. So here we are in the midst of another great learning of 2020 together. And the learning that I'm going through right now is this. I am officially going to be homeschooling my children this year. Now, for a long time, I've had a great respect for people who are able to do homeschool for their kids. I've had certain curiosity about it. How do you do that and do other things and all of that. But I've never felt a particular call to it until this moment. Some of that call is by force because this COVID season has made us all have to do things, sacrifice and do things that we didn't think we were going to have to do. Now, David and I are both oldest children of public school teachers. So we had a bias all of our lives towards keeping our kids in public schools and supporting the public schools and doing what we can to honor the teachers of public schools. And certainly it has become increasingly aware during this season how valuable they are and how much they actually do that has very little to do with public school teaching, but they're doing all of these other things too. I want to talk about that for just a minute. So if you're a public school teacher, it's really not a job where you're just teaching someone's child or you're just educating someone's child. Today's public school teachers also have to be extra parents for those who have bad home situations. They have to be nutritionists to make sure that these kids get fed who sometimes don't get all 3 meals a day. Sometimes they go hungry until the next meal's at school. They have to be social workers in terms of actually thinking about what are the resources of these kids and how do they make it to survive before they can even begin to work towards educating and thriving in their learning. So what we're asking of public school teachers is immense. And for many years, different people, different states, I know my home state of Alabama is particularly bad at this, but even here in California, we don't fund our schools well, and we don't fund our public schools equitably. We fund our public schools from property taxes of different areas, so that if you live in a really wealthy area, those property taxes, you have lots of money for public schools. And if you live in a poorer area or a rural area or things where the houses don't cost as much and the property taxes are not as high, then you have very little funding for the schools. So already we are not funding our schools as a public school. We are funding our schools as school for the haves and schools for the have-nots. And so these kids that are from rural areas or poorer areas don't get the same benefits to their education because they don't have the money to get all these extra things and the resources that schools in other areas. So that's why schools in Birmingham, Alabama, tend to be better than, as far as resources, the amount of things and all the things, than schools, say, in Abbeville. I'm just picking on Abbeville. I love you, Abbeville, if anybody sees me from there. That doesn't mean that the teachers are not working as hard. It means that they have less to work with. Now, in some cases, just like any profession, you've got teachers that aren't doing their job, but that's not the people I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about the systemic inequity that we have in our public school. Now, combine that with the systemic inequities that we have in terms of wages, in terms of resources for different things. For example, so these kids that are coming from these homes their parents may be working 2 jobs because they don't make enough. There's not a minimum wage that's a livable wage that's required. All of these kinds of things, maybe they're not making enough to be able to have the bandwidth to provide for their children. This is a multi-generational problem, so maybe those parents didn't have resources, so they didn't get the education, and now they feel that they can't have the skills that they need to resource the ways that they need to resource in order to be able to homeschool their child. There's a lot of pieces to this, and so here you've got children that are in homes who the parents, may not have had that much education themselves, or maybe they did, but now they have to work jobs that they can't just quit their job or bend their job or make space in their life for their job plus this, and they're totally overwhelmed and they feel like they are losing what little sanity they had left. So the multiple injustices in our system have caused this mess where we've got parents that are super stressed out, don't know what to do with their kids, don't know how to work and have their kids at home all day, and then older kids taking care of the younger kid. There's all these different problems. And then the schools that are normally the social workers and the extra nurses and the nutritionists and the mom and the dad and the teacher are now looking at this and going, these kids are not going to get anything if we are not able to teach them in the school, and therefore they have to open up the school, if at all possible, if the state lets them, for 4 or 5 days a week. The elementary school year is going to be open unless the state shuts them down. Their plan originally was to open with all the kids for 4 days a week and then have a training program on Fridays so that they have some type of hybrid model just in case. But the just in case may not even get here because the state may not allow them to do that if we're on the watch list. But I'm just saying, why did we get to that? There's a lot of factors, and the factors aren't particular to the teachers, because what we're asking the teachers to do is incredibly awful. Is to be all of these things and to risk their lives to maybe have COVID. That is completely unfair to ask of our teachers and the staff. However, that may not come to pass that way, and then we've got to figure out how these teachers who may not have as many resources as school in, I'm just picking on Beverly Hills, we'll just say Beverly Hills, how are they going to get the resources to do all the tech work? How are they going to get the resources to make all the adjustments so that these kids can learn? How are they going to get the resources to make sure that the kids have the resources at home to learn? There are so many issues right now. I'm giving thanks for our teachers. I'm giving thanks for our community. But I also recognize we have to do something to really address these systemic problems in our country, in our state, and in our city. Because this is broken. One thing COVID has told us, whether it's the meat packing places in the middle of wherever that aren't doing sanitary practices, and we get all the problems at our meat and people getting sick with COVID and something, or whether it's the massive unemployment and people not having enough to be able to pay their bills, or whether it's what do we do with our kids and public schools and all those kinds of things. There's just a lot of broken. Now, the sad part about a lot of broken is that, it hurts and it's scary and people don't want to think about it. People don't want to contemplate it. But the exciting part about a broken moment is that when something breaks, we can put it together in a new way, and a better way. It gives us opportunity, space for creativity. And so with that, I want to express a little bit of creativity that's been going on in my house regarding this homeschool. At first, when I was thinking about homeschool, I was totally intimidated, and what I do when I'm intimidated, I have a big thing ahead of me, is I start reaching out to everybody, right? Give me information, give me knowledge, and I'm still doing that. But I think now I kind of have a plan as to how we're going to do this, and David and I, thank God I have a husband that's also willing to help and do the things. But what days and hours we're going to take with the kids to make sure that they get their learning and all those kinds of things. And so it's a different kind of life than I thought I was going to be living, even a year ago, even 6 months ago. But I'm trying to look at this as a time for bonding for my family and I, as a time to get to know my children better, as a time to learn some things myself, and as a time to really grow into the person that I want to be, and then the person that I'm hoping to provide space for them, my children, to become. So as a consequence of that, as I'm learning these things, I will endeavor to find ways to also share with you some of my learning and some of my growth, some of our growth, and provide resources that may help some of you who are also at home doing these things. I know I'm not the only parent that's been seriously considering homeschool, as in not a public school, but just going ahead and jumping over to homeschool. But even people that are distance learning may want to supplement their stuff with some of the things that we're doing. So what I'm trying to say is, if you are a parent and you are struggling, I see you. I'm with you. And I want to help you, and I want us to be together in this season where we're trying to learn how to grow ourselves, and then how to help our children to grow, because it's a different kind of moment. And so my hope is that you will, if you yourself don't have kids, but you know someone who does, my hope is that you'll share this with them, this good word, and invite them in to this kind of community with us. It's not going to be the only thing that I'm talking about, but I do want to integrate that in to the discussion, because it's about to be a decent sized piece of my life, is homeschooling. And that will start, we're going to start at the same day that the Bishop schools are going to start, which is next Thursday. And so my prayers are particularly with the parents today, and with our community, as we try to figure out how to keep our children safe and healthy, how to keep their parents safe and healthy, how to keep their family safe and healthy, extended family, how to look at these systemic problems and start to re-script something that is creative and hopefully better for everybody. And my hope is that you will join me in prayer and in action on these things. God bless you as you go through the rest of your day. Thank you for this moment of time that you have granted me, and I appreciate you, and I love you. Bye for now.